Annyeong Buzz! Welcome back to your favorite place to spill the hottest tea in Korean entertainment, where we don't just report the news, we talk about it. So grab your iced coffee or your ramyun, because we're diving deep today. And today, it's getting controversial. We need to talk about BLACKPINK's Jisoo and her upcoming movie Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Yep, the same fantasy action movie everyone was hyped about? Well, now it's at the center of a major backlash. And honestly, things are not looking good in the comment sections across Korean forums right now. So, here's what happened. The character posters and teaser for the film just dropped. And instead of everyone getting excited, a storm of criticism hit hard. Jisoo plays a character named Lee Ji-hae, and her Constellation, which in this universe is a godlike entity giving her special powers, is none other than Admiral Yi Sun Sin. Yep, that Admiral Yi, the legendary Korean naval hero who led victories during the Imjin War against Japan in the 1500s. A historical icon. Now here's where things got messy. In the poster and teaser, Jisoo's character is shown wielding a gun, not a sword or bow, which were the weapons Admiral Yi actually used in real history. And this did not sit well with Korean netizens. Let me just say, I kind of get where the frustration is coming from. When you take a national hero like Admiral Yi and turn him into a background power for a fictional character, that's already a pretty bold creative decision. But to then visually strip away the very weapons and symbols tied to his legacy? That's where it starts to feel disrespectful, especially for fans who hold Korean history really close to heart. And I know, it's a fantasy movie, not a documentary. But here's the thing. When you're adapting a story that already carries real historical weight, and you make changes like this, people notice, especially in Korea, where national pride and historical figures like Admiral Yi aren't just textbook names, they're icons. To make things worse, this isn't the first time Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint has been accused of watering down, or even erasing Korean historical context. Remember the Japanese webtoon version? A line originally about a Korean independence activist, Yu Gwan-soon, was changed into a yin-yang sorcerer of contradiction. Like, what even is that? That's not just a minor change. That's a complete rewrite of cultural meaning. And then there's the constellation tied to An Jung-gon, another important Korean figure, being reportedly removed. Fans are now wondering, is this a pattern? Are these changes being made to make the content more palatable for international audiences, particularly in Japan? And if so, is that okay? Honestly, I feel torn. On one hand, I get that movies are different from books or webtoons. Changes happen. Creative liberties are taken. But on the other hand, there's a responsibility when dealing with real-life heroes and symbols, especially ones tied to colonization and national identity. You can't just gloss over that for the sake of aesthetics or global marketability. What do you guys think? Is it acceptable to change these historical elements in a fictional universe for the sake of the storyline? Or should there be a line when real cultural and historical figures are involved, even in fantasy? Because Korean netizens are saying enough is enough. Some are even openly wishing for the movie to flop, which I have to say is pretty harsh considering the hard work the entire cast and crew put into this. But this tells us something deeper. People are emotionally invested. This isn't just about Jisoo or her acting. It's about what kind of message this film is sending about Korean history. And it doesn't help that the CEO of Realize Pictures came out a while ago and said the changes were approved by the original author. Okay, fine. But then why wasn't Jisoo's character explained like Yoo Jung-hyuk's was? The team clarified that Yoo uses both a sword and a gun, giving at least some context to balance the backlash. But for Jisoo? Radio silence. No explanation. For why the sword, a core symbol of Admiral Yi, was removed from her character's design. That's what's making fans feel uneasy, like there's an intentional avoidance happening. And that silence is exactly what's fueling even more frustration. Fans aren't just angry about the weapon swap, they feel like there's a lack of transparency. When you're dealing with a story that involves real national figures, especially someone like Admiral Yi who represents Korean resistance and resilience, people want to know why changes are being made. They want clarity, not vague statements, or selective explanations. Let's be honest, a lot of people were rooting for this movie. Jisoo stepping into a fantasy action role? That's exciting. This could have been a huge career moment for her. She's been showing a lot of growth, especially after Snowdrop, and many fans were hoping to see her take on a strong, bold character. But now, the controversy is taking over the conversation, and instead of excitement, we're seeing hashtags and comment threads full of anger and disappointment. And I can't help but wonder, was this all preventable? Could this have been handled better if the creative team had communicated earlier, explained the reasoning behind the character design choices, and engaged with the fans in a respectful way? Here's a thought. What if the movie included a fictionalized version of Admiral Yi's symbolism, but acknowledged that it was a reinterpretation? Something like a clear note in the film or a behind-the-scenes interview, where they explain they're not trying to replace historical accuracy, but rather pay homage through a modern lens. Would that have softened the backlash? Because right now, the silence is just making people assume the worst. And that's a shame, not just for Jisoo, but for everyone involved in this project who probably worked super hard to bring a beloved web novel to life. Now let's talk about Jisoo's position in all this. It's important to separate the actress from the decisions made by the production team. Jisoo likely didn't decide what weapon her character would hold, or how much historical context would be included. But sadly, she's becoming the face of the controversy. And that's what happens when you're the most recognizable name in the cast. She's getting the heat, whether it's fair or not. And this brings up a bigger issue we need to talk about. Why are we so quick to pin everything on the actors when things go wrong in a production? Why not hold directors, screenwriters, or producers more accountable? Jisoo didn't write the script. She didn't design the poster. But she's the one people are attacking. Isn't that something we, as fans, should be more mindful of? I'm curious what you guys think. Do you believe the blame is falling too hard on Jisoo? Or do you think, as the public face of the movie, she shares some responsibility in how it's received? Let's shift gears a little and talk about the global perspective. For international fans who aren't as familiar with Admiral Yi's historical importance, the outrage might be confusing. They might see the gun as just a cool weapon or a stylistic choice. But for Korean viewers, that sword represents legacy. It's not just a prop. It's a symbol of Korean strength against colonization and foreign invasion. So when it disappears, even in a fantasy world, it feels like erasure. And here's the tricky part. As K-content becomes more global, the industry is constantly balancing between making things culturally authentic and making them accessible to a wider audience. But are we starting to lose something in that process? Is Korean history being simplified or rewritten to appeal to international markets? That's a huge question, and I'm not saying there's an easy answer, but it's one we need to talk about. Let me ask you guys directly. If you're a Korean viewer, how do you feel about this constant watering down of history in dramas and movies? And if you're an international fan, do you feel like knowing the deeper context helps you enjoy the content more, or is it just confusing? Personally, I love when a drama or film makes me curious enough to Google something, to learn more about the history or folklore behind it. That's part of the beauty of Korean content. It's rich, layered, and meaningful. So I hate to see that depth stripped away for the sake of global simplicity. Now with Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint releasing this July, the pressure is on. People are going to be watching this movie with a critical eye, not just for the action or visuals, but to see whether it respects the cultural roots of the story, or whether it ends up as another case of good intentions gone wrong. So, what can we do as viewers? We can hold creators accountable, yes, but we can also have thoughtful discussions, like the one we're having right now, instead of going straight to hate or boycott. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to demand better. But let's do it in a way that encourages change, not just conflict. All right, Buzz fam, it's your turn. Are the criticisms toward Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint valid? Should Jisoo be held responsible for how her character is portrayed? And where do you draw the line between creative freedom and historical integrity? Let's fill the comment section with real opinions, whether you agree, disagree, or feel totally conflicted. I'll be reading through all of them, and I want to hear from you. Because this isn't just a movie, it's a conversation about culture, storytelling, and the future of K-content. This is Anyong Buzz, signing off for now. But I'll be back real soon with more updates, more tea, and of course, more buzz. Stay curious, stay respectful, and keep the conversation going.